This is a slide. I work with an organisation called CompTIA. So I have my own business, which is in IT, that I've had for the last 17 years. But I work with an organisation called CompTIA, who are the Computing Technology Industry Association. And part of what they develop is research work, education, all sorts of bits and pieces to try and help people to track through IT. One side of it is we do certifications. So we sell about $60 million worth of certifications per year. So we work on the education side and we work on the channel. So we work with vendors, with IT distributors, we work with managed service providers. And one of the things that we're trying to get people to do is educate end users into how to be cyber secure. So I don't know whether you can read that, but this is an 8-step, very simple education process that helps end users become more aware of the risk that they're at and more aware of what they can do to protect themselves from cyber. So the first thing is avoiding doing secure work on unsecure Wi-Fi networks. So, you know, when you go into Costa or you go into shopping mall and there's free Wi-Fi and we think, great, don't need to use my data because I can go on the Wi-Fi. So you can go on the Wi-Fi, that's fine, it's unsecured. Never, ever, ever give your financial details over on an unsecured Wi-Fi network because you don't know who's watching it. And some cyber criminals now are setting themselves up as hotspots. So you know you can go into Costa and there'll be like Costa Wi-Fi. So they can set themselves up as Costa free Wi-Fi. You don't know it's not Costa. You don't know who it is. So you can connect to their hotspot. They can see every piece of traffic that's going up and down your line. So if you're in a public area and you're using a public Wi-Fi, it's fine to use if you want to just look at stuff on the internet, but don't ever put your banking details in. Don't put any personal details that you don't want people to have. USBs. I've brought my USB device in, I've plugged it into here. I know it's secure because I wouldn't let mine out without them being secure. CompTIA did a survey last summer and they left USBs all around the place over a city to see who would pick them up and who would use them. Because of course they can put the tracking software in that says when it's been put into a device, send a signal back. The majority of those USBs were picked up and put into devices. You have no idea what's on it. You don't know what virus is on it. You don't know whether it's got any malware on there. You don't know whether that's going to put some code onto your machine and sit and track what you do. So if you come across a USB and it's not yours and you don't know where it's come from, don't use it. Don't procrastinate with operating system updates. So we've seen it, and I know it's a pain in the backside. I hate it. I have a laptop, so I dread the days when Microsoft do their updates because it's usually on the day when I've got to go into the office, switch my laptop on, check my emails, shut it down and go. And then I sit there and you get the little wheel going round with all the little dots that just go round. I have to wait for it because actually these days I would rather be secure and 5 minutes late than not do them and potentially lose my entire machine or my entire network because it's not patched and somebody's got through. Passwords. Who's got one password that they use more than once? Yeah. Don't. If they get your one password and they're looking at the sites that you go on, then they'll easily be able to guess what your usernames are for particularly social media things, and they'll be able to get into your account. Once they're in your account, they can find out other information that will help them piece the bits of the jigsaw together so they have a complete picture of you. So if you've got the same password, you need to change it. And I know it's a pain in the backside, and there's only so many passwords you can keep up there. Don't write them down and don't put them on post-it notes on the screen. But do change your passwords regularly. Do keep them as long as you can. What they're saying now is that a 12-digit password can be hacked really quickly. So the best passwords are where you have a phrase. So think of a phrase, something that is personal to you, but it's a phrase, and change some of the letters for numbers so that it's much more difficult for somebody to interpret what that would be. But don't keep the same password on different sites, and do change them regularly. I change mine every time I get a phone because it always logs you out of all your apps, and then I can never remember what my password was, so I have to reset the things. Don't mix your work and your personal logins. So if you have a password, don't have the same passwords for your work logins as you do for your personal logins. Otherwise, again, you're opening up the scope for people to be able to see more of who you are, to see whether or not they want to use you to commit fraud. Don't recycle your login credentials. So if you've used a password in the past, don't reuse it. Don't go back to it. Always make sure that they're different. Who's heard of two-factor authentication? So two-factor authentication requires you to have two different methods to log into something. So it could be that you have a password and you have to put a code in. But it becomes more secure because it's more difficult to break into. So some applications are geared up for two-factor authentication. Use it if it's there. And if you come across people who do cybersecurity training, take it, because it's an ever-changing world. The stats that I've talked to you about today probably will not be the same even next week. They will be different. The landscape changes all the time. Attackers are finding new ways of getting into different devices. So Apple, who traditionally everybody has thought has been, you know, well, it's Apple, it's really safe. People don't hack Apple. Apple now are more in the commercial world than they ever have been in the past. So they have Apple Macs, MacBooks in big organisations being used by very senior people. So attackers are finding ways into it. iOS as an operating system, Mac OS, they are not 100% foolproof. No operating system is. So if you come across training, then take the opportunity, because most of it doesn't take too long.